really a blessing to get this rain in July. It rained 5 or 6 inches as far as I'm concerned. It won't hurt a thing. Nobody's got any hay down, except down around Chalice, and it doesn't rain there very often, but once in a while it really gives it to them. But raised now because there's only 2 or 3 people in the valley that raise cattle, and there's only 1 or 2 that try to raise enough feed and enough pasture and put up enough hay to winter here. Other people have ranches in the lower country where they can raise feed enough to feed these cattle out and bring them up here to pasture in the summertime. And the Forest Service and the National Recreation Area, they want to see a cow grazing on this ground and nothing else, period.
How did they used to do it? Did they winter in here?
Oh yes, oh yes. They had a few head of cattle, and you had to have an enormous amount of land like my father did. He could get up to about 50 or 60 head of cattle and still have pasture to graze those cattle on in the summertime, and still have enough land to raise hay enough to feed them during the winter. Once in a while we'd run out of hay and have to chop down quaking apple trees and everything else to feed them, and haul hay from Stanley at those days at $35 and $40 and $45 a ton. And it was all loose hay. You hauled it on a hay rack on a 5 and 6 feet of snow, which made it, and cattle were only worth about $21 a head, so it would have been better to have shot them and hung the hides on the fence and tried to save them, you know.
What kind of hay did you put out?
This is wild hay in the early days here with the little timothy. Mostly wild meadows. They took up these places that had wild meadows on. You cut the wild natural grass, and then as you cleaned different areas of sagebrush and ant hills with a grubbing hoe, and just seeded it down while they went into clovers like red or alsike, brome and timothy. And we have a native timothy here called meadow fescue, which grows wild and matures early. And it gets all sort of dry looking long before the rest of the hay is ready to cut. But it has some foliage down near the bottom, but it's a long, high, spindly looking grass. It doesn't build up much, but it's awfully good feed when you do get a bunch of it. It's good horse hay, real good horse hay. And any of this wild hay that grows here, I'd rather have a ton of it than I would a ton and a half of alfalfa to feed out an animal. It'll go farther and it has more strength in it. And it's wonderful all-around hay for sheep, cows, and horses both. Because they can pick what they want. There's so many different varieties. You've got weeds of all kinds and dandelions now. Nutgrass, wiregrass, slough grass, and every other thing mixed with it. White slough grass. It takes a lot of it to make 100 pounds of hay, but it's good feed if you feed enough of it. It grows where it's extremely wet. It's a broad, it isn't a leaf, it's a blade, I'd call it. But it's real good hay. The old timers used to use it to stuff their appareos, you know, the pack that they used on the mules, the saddles, an appareo made out of leather. It was introduced in this country from the Spanish people in the south, and they put willows in stick in a long willow that was peeled and stand them up and down on the, and then they put it on the mule and cinch it down after they soaked it in the river for a while, and they had it real good and wet, and they'd leave it on that mule until it dried, and it fit the mule perfectly. And then they'd stuff it with this slewgrass hay, and that made a padding to protect the ribs when they were packing mine machinery and stuff to these different mines like Custer and Bonanza through the old hay trail that they used to bale hay up here at what's now Sandy Brooks's place. The packet from here to Custer and Bonanza in the early days was 65, 70, and 80 head of mules.
Is that
The
close
Seuss.
to the Ellis's?
Pardon?
Is that close to the Ellis's?
Yes, right there. There's an old post that's out in the field where they had their old horse baler anchored.
I've never
It
seen
was a
one of those.
wooden affair, and there's another one over here in the head of Joe's Gulch where they baled out of the wild meadow there and packed that hay into Custer by mule trains. Jesus, a Mexican, was one of the big packers of the country in the early 80s and 90s.
Would they put up loose hay too? Would they put up their loose hay too?
The ranchers did here, yes. There was no way of putting up hay in any other way. You use slips, you use slings eventually with a Mormon derrick, but most of it in the early days was loaded on a hay rack, on a wagon, by a pitchfork. You had a dump rake and an old horse-drawn mower, and you made these shocks of hay after you mowed it and raked it, and bunched it with the dump rake, and you went out in the field with pitchforks and you pitched it onto the hay rack, and you hauled it up to the haystack and you pitched it off onto the haystack, little by little. Then you'd get it unloaded and you'd go get another load. Then we got Mormon derricks and these rope swings or slings and buck rakes. And that was a real modern way of putting up hay in those early days, was with buck rakes. You raked it with a dump rake after you mowed it with a horse-drawn mower. And then you shocked it, and the biggest shocks that you could make with a dump rake, and then this buck rake would come along and pick those up and bring them in and put them on the slings, and then a derrick horse would pull it up and it would swing around and you could trip it and scatter it out, and you built your haystacks that way.
Did they use a Jackson fork with the derricks, or just a...
Very few people use Jackson forks in this country. Those that did usually had a barn that they'd fork it up, and it would run down a track and they could carry it in the barn. But most of it was just stacked out here in the weather, topped out good. And if we had a lot of rain in the fall of the year, we had some spoilage, but not too bad.
What do you mean by topped out good? Is that a...
Topped out is laid so that the water drains off. It's spread out, keeps spreading it until it's rounded like a roof. You take baled haystacks now with the modern method, they pile those up and usually either have them in a hay shed or put black plastic over it and protect them from the elements. And it's easier to feed because in the wintertime we have some storms here that if you're feeding a haystack and you're way down to the snow level, and you go out there to dig that out of the snow to throw it on a hay rack by hand, and you get a hole kind of dug down, you have to shovel so much snow to get down to that hay, and every time you shovel snow you make a higher wall, and the next blow the next night fills that hole up, and you just keep digging and digging. So when we got down to 2 or 3 feet of hay, tried to haul it just as fast as we could when we had it opened up so we could get it out of there and get it into the barns or get it piled someplace where we could get at it. Because it took you all day to get a load of hay when you had to shovel tons of snow to get the haystack opened up again and it would drift over. And most of the people had a spring or something that they watered their stock, and it was an all winter's job keeping those shoveled out so the cattle could get to the water and keep them chopped out of the ice that froze so that they could drink.
But you're ranching now, aren't you?
Yes.
Still? Is all of this your land? Around
Yes.
this place?
Most of it down through here. This hay field up here is ours. We're going to put up hay again this year instead of pasturing it.
Do you have to cultivate for hay now, or is it still wild?
No. Once you get a stand of alsite clover, timothy and brome grass, orchard grass, little red, maybe a few stalks of alfalfa that you've tried to see whether it would grow. If you keep it fertilized and loosened up, well, it produces pretty good, but you've got to fertilize it occasionally. You don't have to tear this hay up and redo it, but it's better if you do after about 6 or 8 years. Tear it up some and start over. Now I've let my field go to seed up here for about 3 years in a row. And today, if you went up there, just get up, you get new clover, new timothy. Those seeds are still in the dirt, and you stir it up, and then they come out. It's just like reseeding, really. We got a lot more clover this year than we had last, and we're part of the field that we had leveled so that we could irrigate a little better.
When did you start irrigating?
We started in May
How long ago did you start?
of this year. All they've irrigated, except in the early days, the natural wild meadow had water. That's what made it a meadow, is because it was a damp place. And around the outside edges, that hay would dry up a lot more than it would out in the center of it. The reason these wild meadows occurred is because there was an obstruction at the lower end of either rock or gravel built up there that raised the water level up toward the surface of the ground. And it would sub to the surface. There's places in the old home field out here that you can get on and shake it. It's like a bowl of jello for 15, 20 feet around you. Underneath that's all mud and water, with about a foot of sod. You break through that with a tractor or baler, you've got to have a power wagon and a winch to get you out, or a big D8 cat to pull you out of there. And just like an underground lake, see, it has to raise high enough to go over this, so here's your level of the land, and the water just raises up till it gets high enough to go over this obstruction. And there are several of those places throughout the valley. A hard pan at the lower end or something like that that stops the water and raises it up underneath the ground until it forms a maze of roots and sod, we call it. But it shakes if you jump up and down on it. Some places you can take a pitchfork handle and run down there. It's only 3 feet to solid rock, or maybe it's 5 or 6 feet, or maybe it's 15 or 20. And in the spring of the year, a lot of these springs that came out, the grass always grew nice and green early, so your cows would go out on that, and then they'd sink. And it would be 10, 12 feet down to the bottom of that places, and they can't get out. So you pull them out with horses, and then we put brush over the top of them to keep any other animals from walking out in there and getting bogged down. Usually these big old Hereford cows would be in there and you'd get them out, unless you could run a horn in the ground and get your rope off from them and then run like a son of a gun while they jump up and chase you for a quarter of a mile. You know, they're strictly on the fight. And their mud, just their nose and head sticking out, is about all. And they die eventually if you don't find them and pull them out. But we lost a lot of them up around the old home place up here. Just
Where is
new springs that we didn't know of, you know. We cut logs and just corduroy the swamps, or the bog holes as we call them. We corduroy them over so that they're just small things, you know, about 10, 12 feet, 15. But they broke through that sod. And they got to floundering, and the more they floundered, the deeper they got.
Where is the old home place? This is where your father homesteaded?
Yes, it's right east of here.
Across the highway?
Yeah, across the highway on the right side of the road.
Well, is that where Williams Creek is?
No.
Oh.
No, we at one time owned all of the land from Williams Creek clear on up to 4th of July Creek, even the ranger station area up here. Sandy Brooks is Ellis' place. And Shaw's had theirs east of us and a little south. We owned all this here, the Larson place, the other Larson place, the Cutler place, the Perry place, this place here. My dad had a lot of land in here at one time.
Did he get it all homesteading?
No, he homesteaded the home place up here and then took up desert claims. And then other homesteaders that wanted to sell out for $800, $900, or $1,200, why he'd buy cattle and all around the country and made money buying and selling cattle, trailing them out over Galena with horses. Take 4 or 5 days to get them to the market. And he'd invest that money in land. He'd buy this old guy out, he'd buy this rancher out, and he just kept accumulating the land. And then he gave each kid a ranch.
How many of you were
There
there?
was 4 of us. There was Bella and I and Norma. There was 5 of us. Marie and Morgan. And we each got a ranch. Morgan has the home ranch up here. This place here, my father and I bought this from the county. An old homesteader had it out here, and he died, and the county acquired it, so we bought it. But I had a ranch in the center of the Dude Ranch down here, and I sold it to the Dude Ranch and turned around and bought this 320 acres. I had 160. My sister had 160. This sister had 240. And Morgan has the homestead.
One of these sisters married one of the Merritt.
Oh,
What was
Bella, that's my true sister. The others are my half-sister, my half-brother. Got 2 half-sisters and a half-brother. And Bella, that married Stub Merritt, is my true sister. There was 4 of us, but there's only 2 of us left.
see, we've been up to Chalice and spoke with Mrs. Merritt, who homesteaded.
Have you mean?
Yeah, we have.
Have you?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
Enjoyed talking with her.
yeah. I remember Mother Merritt. We call her Mother Merritt. And I went to school with all the kids in Stanley. Murdy and Sadie. Stub. And one that married the
live near close to Hawaiian yet.
Yeah, she cooks at the Y.
And her mother lives out, her place just out of Chowda. She'd be an interesting one to interview.
Yeah. We visited her a couple of weeks ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
And then there's
Did you visit her daughter,
Stella
Critchfield?
Yeah.
Critchfields.
Up in Stanley.
Yeah.
We met-
We've talked to her a couple of times.
See, the Critchfields had a place out here which is now Obsidian, when my dad bought that ranch.
Why did these people sell out?
It's just a little hard to make a living in this country.
Starved out. They
Cattle.
didn't sell out. They just starved out and got out.
That's right. There's no way in this valley that you can make a living year-round on a cow. No way. You can't raise enough cattle on your property and raise enough hay and have enough pasture to get enough cattle to make it worthwhile, unless you've got a ranch in the lower country someplace. That's been tried and tried and tried. Unless you've got some other income, either your wife teaches school or you got a pack string like I've had for years and years, and any other method that you can think of that'll make you a few dollars. We have sheep, we have cattle, we have a pack string. Phyllis taught for 38 years. And 21.
Well, other people have had trail contracts, their wives
That's
have worked
right.
for the Forest Service, their wives have taught, or they've worked on
Those are the
trails.
ones that are still here.
Nobody else.
Those that came in here and you tore this ground up with a team of horses and an old walking plow or a little bitty horse-drawn disc and dig ditches into the various tributaries and river here with a Mormon scraper and a plow. Took you 5 years to dig you a ditch that you could get water enough out to irrigate 30 or 40 acres, even though you had 320 acres of land. So after 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years of that, no income coming in from any source other than what you could do for somebody, like cutting fencing or something to fence the different places, or working on the road, the old county road. My dad used to take all those kind of jobs. He used to go out and shear sheep with the blades to make ends meet and pay off indebtedness that was accumulated at the Vienna mine when he sunk all his money in that and took out 3 carloads of ore that didn't even pay the freight to Salt Lake. And he made money, but he never did get rich in any way. He just made a good existence. He milked cows. He butchered when you could sell meat to different people and mines and things around the country here. And he worked shearing sheep.
Well, he had a dairy, ran a milk route,
Yeah,
delivered beef when they were making these rolls.
yeah.
Because they delivered milk till 10, beef till 10 o'clock at night, be at 4 o'clock
Yeah,
in the
we
morning.
do.
Milk
Delivered
was
milk
this
and meat from here clear to Custer and up Rough Creek, Stanley, and customers here that were working on the highway, and they were building these new roads through here. To furnish milk and meat to the road camps, you know. Well, milk was 2 bits a gallon, and meat was about 20 cents a pound or under, and we butchered at least a beef a week at the home place.
Do you still butcher a lot?
Quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
People buy lambs from me, and if they want it butchered, I'll butcher it, or they can take it and butcher it themselves. I butcher quite a few lambs. I butchered 2 lambs and a beef yesterday.
Do you do it the way that your dad did?
That's where I learned.
We were wondering if you could tell us some about how you go about it.
Well, the main thing is to keep it clean.
Uh-huh.
So we have water in buckets that we can wash our hands every little bit. If we happen to touch the leg that has dirt on it, why, we immediately go and wash our hands before we touch any of the meat or anything like that. We keep it just as clean as we can keep it. And it's, well, people come from Minnesota, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, California, and hardly ever just any more than hit the valley until they're up here to see if I've got a lamb that's big enough that they can butcher.
Mm-hmm.
And they buy these lambs from me. And they have them butchered or they butcher themselves, whatever they want to do. I sell them the lamb and they can go ahead and do whatever they want with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had quite a butchered day yesterday. This beef we butchered is for our own use. And we butcher a lamb every once in a while for our own use. We like lamb. And we've run a trail ride of the wilderness through this country. First one was 1937. And then we didn't have anything more to do with it until I bought Pack Stream and acquired the trail ride in 1951. We ran it for several years until they couldn't get enough people to make it worth our while, and we just said, just forget it. But we cooked for 40, 45, 36 to 48 people every day for 10 days, 2 trips. Now the Forest Service is contacting us to go over to the head of Redfish Lake and put on a real trail ride dinner for 35 people or 30 or 35 people, 28th of this month and also the 14th of August. We have 2 of those. We have all the facilities, ovens and the dishes and everything for that many people. We're the only ones that do in the valley.
Do you have to use a special type of oven for that?
So what we'll serve will be a roast leg of lambs. We'll butcher a lamb and we'll probably roast both the legs and the loins. And we'll have a roast of beef for those that don't like lamb. And most of them say they don't like it, but they come back for seconds after this.
Well, it's hard to find leg of lamb in the stores anymore. All they have is lamb chops. We were wondering the other day what happens to all those other cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, what kind of cuts do you make from them?
Oh, you can get the round steak out of the hind quarter, or you can roast the whole hind quarter, including the rump roast, in one chunk, and then you have the loins, which you get your T-bones and your sirloins and things out of, you know. The sirloin tip is right where the loin and the hind quarter join, right in front of the rib, or the rump roast. And then you get your rib steaks, and then you have your ribs to barbecue, and then you have your shoulder roast, your brisket and shoulder blade. And then you have the forearms off of the hind quarter and the front quarter, and that's the best meat on an animal is the
Oh, really?
is the forearm.
Everybody seems to go for sirloin instead.
Oh yeah. But if you want a real good tasty piece of meat, just boil the forearms.
Makes good stew.
Makes the most delicious stew. It's a kind of a little different textured meat than any of the rest of it, and it has a delicious taste. Then you have the neck that you can boil. and the shoulder roast, blade. And you have your hamburger, of course, flank steak or grind it up for hamburger if you want to. We don't like too much hamburger, so we roll this flank, peel it, get the gristle covering out of it, and then roll it and stuff it with dressing and cook it in the oven. It's pretty tasty that way. I'll take you out and show you where the different cuts are out here if you want to.
Oh, yeah, that
How
would be.
different is the land from the beef?
No different in cuts. They're all the same. You cut it just exactly the same. Only a beef is quite a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
You get your T-bones and your porterhouse, sirloins, your chuck roast, rib steaks, your round steaks or round roast or rump roast or shanks or anything you get out of a beef you can get out of a lamb, or in smaller proportions.
I was surprised the lamb has a brisket too.
Yeah, lamb right now is around 38 to 40 cents on foot. And if you butcher one out, they dress off 50%. So you would charge the double the price it is on foot. Time you take the pelt and the entrails and the head. On the head of a beef, you have some of the most tasty meat in what we call the jowls. And they're on the jawbone under the eye. Right in there, there's quite a good sized chunk. You have sweetbreads that are inside the neck, along the windpipe, close to the lung section. You have the tongue, you have the brains, you have the liver and the heart. There are more minerals in the offalls of an animal than there is in the rest of the carcass.
Really?
If you eat it all. Then inside the stomach you have a lining that is where they make tripe. Looks like a turkey's towel when it's cleaned up. Tough, but they pickle it and it's tasty. And in the case of a pig, you have the covering for weenies or sausage, you know, in the, what we call the marrow gut. It's about 20 some feet long, and they clean it and split it, and it's rolled in cracker crumbs or eggs and cracker crumbs and fried. It's real good.
Did very many people keep hogs around here?
No, grain's too expensive to buy and haul up here just to feed out a pig. Now if you were milking a lot of cows, why, you could buy a few sacks of barley or rolled barley or oats or something like that and have a barrel. Now we raise pigs here when we were milking lots of cows. And we'd have probably 100 gallons of sour milk. We'd dump in a sack of grain in there, you know, and it's half alcohol almost, but it'll make them drunk, but they love it, and they just get fatter than butter on it. But that's one way of getting some relatively cheap meat, is to have this extra milk that you can feed to your pig. But if you had to buy all the grain to bring a pig to 180 to 200 pounds, why, it'd pay you to go down to the sale yard and buy you one already grown out and have it butchered by the independent. We do that. And the bacon and hams and so forth cured. But in the early days we raised a pig. Everybody had a pig that had any milk. And most of them milked a cow or two just to get their own butter, their own milk, make their own cheese, Dutch cheese, and so on.
How do you make Dutch cheese?
Oh, there's several different ways of making Dutch cheese. You can take fresh milk, set it on the back of the stove until it sours, and you heat it to about 80 degrees, and it'll curdle, and you bring it up to 110 degrees, and that's cooked. You don't want it over that or it'll be tough. And then you put cream in it, a little salt, and you make good cottage cheese. My mother, or my stepmother, used to make the finest cottage cheese. Or you can use a little piece of rennet tablet in milk, and it'll curdle and make the curds like the cottage cheese you get out of the store. It's made with rennet or junco. But the old-fashioned way was to let it sour, clabber, we called it, and then heat it just to the right temperature. A lot of them just guessed at it because they had no thermometers. And then you put it in a flour sack and take it out and hang it on the clothesline and let it drip. Get the whey out of it. Then bring it in and put it in a bowl and add some sweet cream to it, a little salt, and it was real delicious cottage cheese.
Did you ever make pressed cheese?
I got a press I made out here. We used to make cheese up at the home ranch. We'd make from a 5 to a 10, 5-pound bricks of cheese every day. We were getting around 80 to 90 gallon of milk a day, and cream and butter. My dad would sell cream to the Armour Company, and these 5-gallon cans, milk cans, ship it out here by team, get on a pickup and go down to Chalice and up to Blackfoot, and maybe get $8 for the can or $5 for the can, whatever it's worth, and pretty soon it got down and we hardly paid the freight, so we just decided to make cheese. We could sell some of the cheese to the local store down in Stanley, and we could eat the rest of it. There was enough of us on the home ranch, and we put in there, we would eat a 5-pound brick of cheese a night. But we had lots of milk, so we made lots of cheese.
I was wondering if any of the old buildings from the home ranch are still standing.
Yes.
Is that over at
There's a
Morgan's?
building up there on the home ranch that came from Vienna. It was torn down piece by piece and marked, and brought down to the home ranch and put up, and when it was finally assembled and my father married a girl from Custer, her father was the one that built this building, and it was a saloon in Vienna. My dad tore it down unbeknownst that it was part of the family, you know. And it belonged to Billy Casto, who had a saloon in Vienna up here. And they tore the building down and moved on to the ranch down here, and we lived in it for years. Then we built a new house. It's still standing. Built some old barns that are about ready to fall over. Most all the old buildings are deteriorated after 50, 60 years.
We're trying to make as much of a survey as we can of some of the old structures around here.
Well, there's an old structure on the Shaw place up there, the old Shaw buildings.
We visited those, but we're not sure what each building was.
Well, I can tell you, the first building, as you drive up, you've got to go by all the modern buildings.
Yeah.
Go through that kind of a cattle guard. You look on your left. Half of that building was the first cabin that the Shaws had. That's facing down toward the valley.
Yeah.
And they had running water in there. They got the pipe from the Fisher mine and put it up overhead in the building, and they piped it out of a spring. And then the cellar was another building that's right off to the left of that one, and then the dream house, as we called it, that's where the bunkhouse was up above. And my uncle built the other part. See, it's in a kind of an L shape.
Yeah.
He built the other part, and that was Mr. Shaw's and Mrs. Shaw's bedroom and a front room. And they had an old barrel churn when I was a kid. I'd go visit them every 2 or 3 days. We just couldn't stay apart, you know, the Shaw kids and the Williams kids, always together. But that churn was always full of cream. Anybody that came could give it a few turns. It was one of those big barrel churns. Turn it too fast, why the cream would stay on one end and wouldn't churn. You turned it slow, it would go chug, 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 chug. That cream falling down, and eventually you'd get butter out of it. But sometimes you'd turn it for 24 hours before it finally made butter, because they didn't know what temperature to have that cream so it would churn, you know, the best. And if you had it too warm, well, then it was what we call salve, you know, and it would just thin and wouldn't gather. But Mrs. Shaw made awfully good butter and made wonderful bread. She made a lot of whole wheat bread, and I loved it. My folks didn't make any whole wheat bread. Dad didn't like it. And I used to trade my sandwiches. I'd go to school. I'd have a sandwich about 3 inches thick, you know, with meat and everything in it, you know, all like the white bread. He'd give me a sandwich that was about 1.5 inches thick of 2 thin slices of whole wheat bread and butter, about all they put in there. So, but I like the whole wheat bread, so I'd trade him every once in a while.
Would the two parts of that building be?
I didn't go
Pardon?
to any of
How old would the two different parts?
Oh, I'd say the first part was around 1910, between 9 and 10. And the other part was probably 1914. And of course Preston built another house there, but that's years later.
Is that the one on beyond on the right?
Over across the little bridge there. But he had another house before that one down in the flat that was finally torn down and burned out. And up at the old Clark place, that's one of the stopovers for all the tourists or freighters or anyone going through the valley would always stop. She served meals and had rooms that they could stay all night. And the barn is still there and the remnants of their buildings. My dad used to carry the mail from Ketchum to that place. It's called Pearson.
Oh, yeah.
And he carried it on on skis. He had a pair of skis that was 11.5 feet long. And housings that they rolled down, and the housing would come up above his belt line and fasten. And there were times when he come over that summit when he never saw those skis from the time he left Galena until he got to Pearson, unless he shoved them out over the Pole Creek Bridge to see if he still had them on. He just plowed a trench down the valley. And they had one washboard in the country, and he used to pack that from one place to the other so they could do the washing and have it done so he could take it back down here next time through. You know, it was one of these old scrub boards. He packed that back and forth all over the country so that the women could do their washing without rubbing the clothes together with their hands. They could scrub it on a board.
See, just as you cross the cattle guard there at the Shaw homestead, and on the right there's what looked like an old barn to us.
It's an old barn.
Is there a blacksmith forge in it? We saw what looked like one and weren't sure.
Well, yes. Preston was a very handy person. He built sleighs, and he could weld in the blacksmith, the forge there. He could weld a piece of car spring to a piece of wagon iron. Very few people today can do that. I mean in a forge. You have to have that spring steel, I've welded it, you have to have it almost ready to burn. The sparks is flying out of your coal fire. You see the little sparks shooting in the air. It's just ready to disintegrate. And your blacksmith heat on your tire, regular wagon tire, was white hot. And it took 2 people to do it. You had a pair of tongs, your anvil, and your everything, your hammer and everything. One would grab the iron, the other would grab the spring steel. That's these truck springs, you know, making sleigh runners. Put it on the anvil and the other on there with the compound and hit it. And the fire would just fly every direction because the metal is almost ready to disintegrate. When you hit it, the fire and everything, and then you could just, and it would stick and make a beautiful weld, and then you could grind it down with a hand grinder. They usually made it on the part that went up on the sleigh runners. See, this is iron up here because it gets less wear. And the spring steel was what was on the bottom of your sleigh runner. It pulls so much easier in the snow than iron. It would polish until it would, well, you could pull those big, great big number 6 bobsleds, and they were around number 6 in size that he used to make. On certain snow conditions, and you had 4 head of horses on it. And when you pull on the lines, you pull the sleigh up on the horses. You pull that easy once you got it moving. And we used to drive a little cutter. We all had little cutters. And we'd drive those to school. We had a team of horses that would drive. We drove from the home ranch to 4th of July Creek where we had school. The Ellis building was a schoolhouse at one time. And that's one of the old buildings in the valley too. And Mrs. Foley taught there when Vel and I drove year after year and was never late or absent. Sometimes it was 60 below zero too when we left home. And the horses would have icicles hanging out of their nostrils 6 and 7 inches long.
How would you keep warm?
Well, they used to bake potatoes in the oven, and we put a baked potato in each pocket, like a Johnny hand warmer today. You put your hands in there, and we heated rocks in the heating stove, and we had a kerosene lantern that we'd put under the lap robe and light it. And we'd get down underneath that, and the horses knew the way, but you didn't dare go too fast or they'd freeze your lungs. And when it was good going, we'd make it in about 5 minutes. Those horses could really get going. The Shaw kids and the Williams kids used to race. We never did go anywhere but what we raced some. You could never pass. Whoever got the road off of the feed ground had the road all the way to the schoolhouse. And we'd hurry up and see if we'd hitch up our team and get the lead going back. So we had to do something, you know.
Well, was Mr. Shaw a blacksmith for people around as well as for
Oh yes,
himself?
he made a lot of things. Preston did. The old man was a mining engineer. He came in here to the Fisher mine, and when the mine was closed up, he took up the ranch down to mouth of Fisher Creek, and he got most all of the tools that were stored, and that's where they outfitted their shop. Things like the old drill presses that turn with the wheel. I've got one of them around here too. And anvils and tongs and things, you know, came from the Fisher mine. Chain hoists and things that they used and put those big boilers in place and so forth. So he had a well-equipped shop. He made a lot of tongs of his own for special jobs, things like that. My dad was a blacksmith too. And he'd make hammers or anything you wanted. And he could take a wagon wheel with a tire run off from it, and he could shrink that tire and put it back on that wagon wheel and be just as good as any blacksmith in the country. He had a big tire shrinker that we hauled from Custer. Bolted on a fir log about 2 foot in diameter and 3 feet wide so we could hold it. Had a great big handle on it and a pole in it so you get a lot of leverage. Put it in there and it just squeezed that metal right together, and you'd heat it again and squeeze it again, and he had a wheel that run around, and the wheel that went around to measure. See, when you got it, then you'd build a big fire and heat the whole rim, and that expanded it. You'd put it on there, and just the minute it dropped into place over the fellows, and then there was lots of buckets of water thrown on it to cool it. And that wheel would shrink until it had a dish in it. Just pull it right in. And it would last for years and years after it was finished. All the little bolts and washers put in to hold the tire, and then linseed oiled, you know, to protect it. But he fixed a lot of wagon. He could weld 2 chunks of iron together and forge up there. Make a lot of things.
We noticed up at the shop place that one of the cabins is on a stone foundation. Did a lot of people do stonework, or who did?
Yeah, most everybody. Well, it was, you had to use your own initiative here. No matter what you were doing, you'd give it some thought, and then you'd start in and see if you couldn't improve on the other guy a little, or follow his method of working up rock. Or now, we had nothing to treat our posts in this valley, and we put in lots of fences. In about 4 or 5 years, they'd start rotting out and rot off, fall over. So it was a continuous job of fixing fence. From then on, every year you had to put in a whole new bunch of posts in a line fence here and there and everywhere, and eventually you were working the whole ranch. Well, when they got creosote and pentachlorophenol and those treating compounds, why, it eliminated this fence building every year. And then they got steel posts, and we'd build buck fences, jack fences, and stake and rider fences, different methods of fencing. The snow would cave them down or tip them over or push them in one way or the other, and they'd go down like a bunch of dominoes.
Yeah.
And a bunch of sheep stampede and hit a jack fence and turn it over for a half a mile, upside down.
I've heard, see all sorts of different descriptions for these kinds. So what's the difference between a buck and a jack?
A buck is 2 posts of the same size, and they're notched out so that they cross.
Yeah.
And the 2 notches fit in, and then they're spiked together. That makes a fence like that. And then a jack fence is a hole board, and we used to take an old wagon wheel and put a big auger in a piece of fir pole and put an iron band around it and then pin it. And then this wagon wheel had a handle on it so that you could turn it, and you build a kind of a table that had the right slope to it. You'd put your post up there, and you'd shove this thing. It was greased and leather over the top of it, so you'd pull it back and forth, see, and put your post in and shove the bit down again in the post. Then you'd turn it there, and it'd bore a hole right through that post on an angle. And then you'd take a small pole, and you'd take an axe and round so it would go in this hole. And you'd put it in the hole of the post and drive it up in there good and solid. And if you wanted to make it a little better, you'd drive a nail in it to hold it. Well, it stuck through the post so that you could put a pole on top, see? It was just a small pole and a big post is all it was.
Oh, I see. But it looks a lot like the buck then.
Yes, it was the same thing, only it had a hole through it, and this jack went into the hole.
Oh, I see.
They had machines that would do that. sort of like a pencil sharpener. But you had to have a vise to hold that, or it'd wind you up like a pretzel. You know, turned with a motor. And you just take it in there and the chips and stuff would just fly, and you could just make that all the same 2-inch size or 3-inch, whatever your pencil sharpener was. Just cut that pole, maybe that big a pole, down to 2 inches if you wanted to on the end, and it'd give a good base for that pushing in your post. See, a lot of these little sprags, as my dad used to call them, were too small. Put them in, you nail them, and then the snow would come on them, and it just shove them right on down. You know, there was no base support in your post, and it would just push them right on down if they were too small. So Dad would pick them up and take an axe and just go around and around them until he got them so they go in the hole and stick through far enough and have a base or shoulder to rest on.
You know, a buck or a jack fence, posts don't have to be dug into the ground.
No,
Does that,
neither one of them.
so do they last longer now?
Oh, yeah, they dry rot in this country here.
Oh.
Would you like to see some of all these things we were telling about, the sweetbreads and the jowl steak?
Oh, sure.
I'm putting them in the deep freeze, if you like. In the heart? Wow, you really have a big heart.
Made a lot of log buildings, but this was a frame building lined with knotty pine on the inside, and we just went ahead and finished it up.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
This wall here, you can't hear anyone drive up outside, it's so well insulated. So you have your cedar or your birch paneling, paper, and 1/2-inch versaboard, and 7/8 inch knotty pine, and then 3.5 inches of insulation with full width 2x4s on 16-inch centers. On the outside you got shiplap, and then some more paper, and then 7/8 inch cedar siding. So you've got a wall here that's better than 6 inches thick.
I imagine it's nice and warm in the winter.
And then this ceiling has got 9 inches of drop. It was 9 feet. We dropped it down to 8. And we got, this is all versaboard. And insulation underneath, insulation above with 3/4 inch plywood on top, and a dead air space in between. And then you walk around upstairs and you never hear anybody down here. This floor's got 1/2 inch versaboard, an inch, well, shiplap, an inch subfloor on the floor. It's 3 thicknesses thick with paper between each section.
Did you do the fireplace?
Quite a bit of it.
It's really nice. What kind of mortar is that?
Well, it's lime and cement with color in it. And the rock, we know everyone out and we know them all. And we made this drip part here out of rock. Come in with snowmobile, wet snowshoes on, you know, stand there and stomp it off and soon dries up. But if we don't keep the screen over that, you can see what happens to the rug. Spark hops out every once in a while and burns a hole in it. But we made this place to live in, and that's just the way we've got it.
Yeah. Seems quite. I suppose we ought to get back now.
I think we've been recording, but we'd really like to